Podcasting with Ceri Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. This week's guest is no stranger to most of you. She hails from Halifax in West Yorkshire and is making a name for herself with her skills in fly tying on social media and also on various game shows across the country. On our chat, she tells us how it all started for her when she was a young girl, 11 years age, fishing on a boat in Carsington Reservoir. And she said after day one, she hated it. But that soon changed, and she went on to get a fly tying kit, and the rest is history. The local water is the River Calder, which is only a short walk from her home. She talks about her love for the river, and also tells her recent trip to Bosnia, where she had a big grayling, something which she's passionate about. And her skills in fly tying has not gone unnoticed. For now she works full-time with Semperfly, managing the pro tyres and social media content, and she's loving every minute of it. Welcome to my chat with Phillippa Hake.
Hi, Ceri.
Hiya Phillippa, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Good, thanks. How have you been? Have you been out this week?
Not this week. We had a bit of rain over the weekend. Was it the weekend? No, it wasn't. It was Monday, Tuesday. We had a bit of rain.
Yeah.
And the Calder is one of these rivers where it can look like it's going to rain and it comes up. So yeah, it rises quite rapidly. So I've just to be honest, I don't have time really either. But I'm hoping to get out next week.
Good.
Fingers crossed.
I did see a post up. Was it last week you had a rainbow somewhere on a river?
Yeah, on the Derwent, yeah.
Derwent. Have you fished it before?
I have fished it before, but not for probably a few months actually. And it's not somewhere I go quite a lot. It's in Derbyshire. But it's a case of, because I've not had much experience on it on my own, it was the first time that I fished it on my own.
Right.
So yeah, it was kind of putting what I'd been told into action, and it worked.
Good.
So that was good.
You were saying that it's a fair drive from you then, was there an hour or so? So where are you based then? I'm
based in Halifax in West Yorkshire, which is the easiest way to describe it is if you look at a map, yeah. We are pretty much in between Manchester and Leeds. So we're on like the border of Lancashire. Dare we say
right.
it?
So you're in between two football cities, and then I suppose yes. Halifax is known for rugby league, though, is it?
Well, I can't answer the rugby question because as much as I'd love to, I just don't understand it. I've tried. My brother-in-law plays rugby, but it goes in one ear and it goes out of the other. I'm more of a football person.
Right.
But I don't support either of them. Don't
you?
I actually support Liverpool.
Oh, well, we'll edit that out, right?
Yeah.
You won't be watching the Rugby World Cup then? That's on at the moment.
No, unfortunately, no. I won't be. No. Yeah, I just don't understand it.
Right. So tell me, how has your season been?
It's been pretty good. Well, when I've been out, that is. I mean, the weather's not been great. We had the big long dry spell at the beginning of the year, and then it seemed to rain and be really windy for like months on end, and then all of a sudden it's September, and it was a bit. I've had the thing of, oh God, I really need to go fishing. So I've had a bit of an itch to get out over the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
But I've had some good days and some bad days. I mean, we all have a blank session every now and again, and I think it's good to have a blank because it makes you think a little bit more, and actually it makes me appreciate when I actually do catch fish. So yeah, it's been a bit of an up and down. It's been good, but it's been a bit of an up and down season in terms of being able to get out and the right conditions.
Yeah, I found that like early season, the spring, we had a lot of wind, these cold northeasterlies, which went on for weeks, and then
it just killed the hatches as well.
It did. And I went out a couple of days ago now to a local lake where I fish, Talabont, because the water's risen, and you think, oh, it'll freshen things up now. It's probably gone up about 7-8 foot, I'd say.
Yeah.
And but as I waded in, it was just crazy. It was warmer than my bath.
Yeah,
so it
was weird. It was really strange, wasn't it?
Yeah,
really weird.
So even though we get in rain, it's warm rain. So it's not doing any good at all, really. But
I think it's something that we've got to get used to. These warm winters and cold starts in the summer.
Yeah.
And then we'll get the warm weather that we've had this September. It's just a bit bonkers.
Yeah. I think November starts to fish more now, like for fry feeders on the lakes and that, than it used to be years ago, September, because of temperatures. So tell me, you're in Halifax, and I remember you saying before that your local water is the Calder.
Yep.
Tell me more about that river then.
So the Calder it's not the most picturesque river. It's very urban. We've got it starts up near in Lancashire, like Todmorden Way, and then runs through Hebden Bridge, Mythen Royd, Thorby Bridge, and then eventually runs out towards York. And it's, like as I mentioned earlier, it could look like it's going to rain, and that river comes up.
Yeah.
And it's got a tendency to kind of stay up as well. It'll take sometimes like 2 or 3 days for it to become reasonably fishable again.
Right.
Because it's quite peaty water, so the river never runs fully clear. And we don't get, if you compared it to somewhere like, I don't know, the River Eden or even the Derbyshire rivers, we don't get the kind of hatches as you would on them rivers. They're quite sporadic in terms of it's just like a little flurry of like olives or sedges or anything like that. But it doesn't put a stop to the amount of fish that are in there. It's one of these rivers where you've got to learn how to fish it. You can't just, I mean, you probably could if you're quite experienced, just kind of rock up and fish the river. But if don't have a lot of like river experience, then it can be a bit of a frustrating river to fish.
Right.
I get messages quite a lot saying, where can I find some fish? And it's just a case of putting the time and effort into actually finding what flies work, where the fish are, and all river crafts and things like that. But yeah, it's got a good head of wild trout and grayling in it, and I just love it, absolutely love it. And it's only literally at the bottom of the road of my house.
That's handy.
It's walking distance, yeah.
That's nice to be able to be so close. You can just go for a couple of hours, even for an hour.
Yeah, well, as mentioned to a few people recently, actually, I've started kind of getting more out of the fishing session that's maybe 2 hours long, instead of fishing all day long from like I know guys that they leave the house at like 6 in the morning and they don't get back until like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Whereas I have come to get more joy and I get more out of a shorter session, say an hour or two after I finished work, rather than heading out for a full day's fishing. And that's all I need, really. I get what I need from it, but I understand why people do enjoy the full days fishing, but I find them quite tiring. And like I say, it's what you get out of it, isn't it, that counts the most.
Yeah.
And if I don't catch, I don't catch. It's being on the water really that is the best thing that comes out of it. The fish are just the bonus.
So you're looking forward now. I guess the grayling fishing will come into its own now in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, I've actually been catching more grayling than trout the past few weeks or so that I've been out. Because I find, particularly in the colder, I find that we do have more grayling than trout. And we have quite there are some big grayling in there. Don't get me wrong, there are lots of small grayling, but we do have quite a large head of the bigger grayling. You've just got to know where they are and how to fish for them, really. And it all comes back to putting time and effort into working on your river craft and presentations and all that kind of stuff.
So how did it all start for you then, fishing?
So it all kicked off really when I've always had an interest in fishing, and when I was younger, my brother would actually go fishing like on our local canal, and I'd often go with him, and I've always had some sort of fishing rod, but the fly fishing came when I was probably about 11, and my mum and dad have a caravan. And they're in this caravan club, and in the club there was a group of guys that just, whenever they got together, they would go fishing. And this one weekend, we went down to Carsington Water, which is in Derbyshire, and they were all going fishing. Now, my dad has never done fishing; he's never had any interest in fishing, and for some strange reason, he said, "Yeah, I'll go with them." And because they was going out on a boat, I just wanted to go out on a boat more than anything. I wasn't really bothered about going fly fishing. I just wanted to, because Dad was going on a boat. Little 11-year-old me wanted to go out on a boat. So go on then. So I goes out with them, and it couldn't have gone more wrong if it tried. The guy that we was with was quite novice as well. Like, he didn't really know what he was doing. We certainly didn't know what we was doing, and that was it really. We kind of came in, and I was like, nah, it's not for me, fly fishing. And then fast forward probably maybe a year or so, we went again, but this time we was on Formark, which is also in Derbyshire, another reservoir, and we went out, and my dad caught fish, and he gave me the rod, and then that was it. From that moment, I was hooked. And I'm 100% certain that if he didn't give me the rod and I didn't land that fish, I wouldn't have been fishing. God knows what I'd have been doing, but it wouldn't have been fishing. I wouldn't have been where I am today. Definitely not.
You'd been playing golf or something like that, no?
Yeah, probably football. It was all football before fishing.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And he got me a starter fly kit rod thing, and God, it was awful. It had this foam handle, and every time I cast, it'd loosen off, so the end would fly off. when I cast the rod, the end would actually fly off at every 5 or 6 casts. It was horrible. I think I've still got it somewhere. I don't think I'll ever throw it away. Just for the memory of it flinging off.
Use it in the garden to tie your beans to or something.
Yeah.
I remember something like that. It was like a black foam handle, one of the ones I had. It was a fiberglass. It wasn't even carbon years ago. But
I'm pretty sure mine's I'm sure it's a Shakespeare one, and it came with them. It came with a reel line, some really badly tied flies.
Yeah.
And all that kind of thing. But yeah, it got the job done in the end. But
and that was on Carsington. Do you know what? I've never been. I've heard of it. When I used to work with Troutfish, I used to hear stories about Carsington. It's a good brown trout water. Oh, it was. I don't know if it is now, is it?
I can't say I've been since probably pre-COVID. But I'll always hold it, as one of my favourite waters, because I think it goes a bit untalked about. A lot of people, it's a bit of a hidden gem, I think, and it is a cracking water. I mean, it's not too big, it's not too small, and it's just great fishing. And I should really put more time and effort into going back down and doing some reservoir fishing.
Yeah, I like the reservoirs, to be honest.
Yeah.
You say you were hooked then. Was your father the same, or did he? Is he as interested in it as you? No.
We'll go occasionally. He's probably not been for a few years now. Bless him, he gets arthritis in his hands. So I always know when he's had enough, because especially if we go out on like a boat or anything like that, he'll just sit back and he'll get his camera out and he'll go, "I'm just going to take some pictures." And I know then that he's getting a bit tired or his hands are hurt. And he never took to the river fishing. He found it all a bit complicated, bless him. But yeah, we do sometimes go still.
So how did it transform from you were going on the lakes to eventually you went on the rivers? Yeah.
So it all started with the lakes and the small still waters, which I'm probably sure it does for a lot of anglers. And I was walking the dog one day down on the river, like I say, it's only literally at the bottom of our road. And on the river, there was this guy stood in the middle of the river with a fishing rod, and I was like, "Whoa, he's fly fishing!" And completely unbeknown to me, you could fly fish on a river. My dad was with me, and we was talking to him, and it turns out it was a local guide. He was called Gary Hyde, and he's no longer with us now, sadly. But he gave me some flies, and I've still got some. He gave me a San Juan worm, an olive San Juan worm, and I've still got it.
Wow.
And then the next thing was, "Dad, can I have some waders? Dad, I need a river rod." So I got all the kit for the river fishing, and I was in college, and probably, how old would I have been? 16, 17, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back for what would have been my final year at college. I was in that space where you're not sure what you want to do. You don't know if you want to go carry on or get a job or anything like that. So I spent literally the whole of that summer fishing the same spot on the river the whole of the summer, and I'd not had a clue what to do.
Wow.
And on the very last day, I caught a really small grayling. And I was like, "Wow, this is good." And then I decided not to go back to college, and I got a full-time job.
All right.
And that was like another turning point. I'm convinced that if I'd not caught these certain fish, I would have just packed it in. But if I could look back, I would have booked a guide, because I think if you're unsure about anything, about any, rivers, still waters, or the big reservoirs or anything, the best thing you can do is book a guide, because these guys know their waters like the back of the hand. And that's
you can waste a lot of time, can't you? You could have days trying to find out something where they will tell you in an hour.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like what I did. I spent 6 or 7 weeks going down to the river, and I was just fishing every day, and nothing was happening. And if I'd have just booked this guide, Gary, God knows what would have happened, but it'd been a fast track into catching some fish for sure. But that's where it all started on the river fishing. Sorry, and then it kind of then grew to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and stuff. And I got in contact with. Well, it opened the door then to friendships and whatever else. And I ended up meeting up with Lisa Isles, who she's quite close to me. She's in Blackpool, so she came over. And again, having these links to people and people to take you out and show you, they're spending their time and and efforts to come over and fish with me was invaluable. It was just a massive learning curve, and you end up meeting people on there that become friends for life. And that's again where it all kicked off. It was just, right, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but I've got an idea, and that was it. It just kind of grew from there.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you get weekly podcasts, some of the country's leading names, plus access to the archive of over 140 episodes, plus behind-the-scenes photography and prizes. And this week, Phillippa has given a prize of a selection of flies she has tied for my Patreon members. To join, visit patreon.com/casting with Ceri Jones. You had the taste then of the competition scene as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so I got into that all came about. I was going to Poland to fish on the chalk streams in Poland with Lisa. And the day that we was going was the day of the Ladies National, which was it on Grafham? I think it was on Grafham. And because I didn't drive then, it was a case of I'll have to either fish this competition and see what happens, because me and Lisa was travelling together to France on the Eurotunnel.
What was that? Just for pleasure, was it, or was it a competition you were with her?
No, that was just a fishing trip, just a pleasure fishing trip. Yeah. But the competition was the same day that we were travelling, so it was either I go down and sit on the bank for 6 hours and twiddle my thumbs kind of thing, or I just enter the competition and fish. So I entered the competition. I ended up actually qualifying as a travelling reserve. And I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? And because before we'd started fishing, these guys rocked up and they've got big, massive tackle boxes, which have got like 20 fly lines, different reels. And I was like, I'm really embarrassed now, because I showed up with one rod, 3 lines and a reel. I was like, oh God. And they've got like hundreds of flies. I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? This is embarrassing. But yeah, I caught 2 fish and I qualified as a travelling reserve. And as it turns out, someone dropped out through injury and I actually fished in the international. And again, that was like a bit of a learning curve. And it's, I get that guys enjoy competition fishing and stuff, but it's not for me. I don't think I get much more pleasure out of relaxed environments and not having the pressure of catching so many fish. It was actually quite a tough day. It had been really, really like windy all week. It was on Grafham. The international was on Grafham,
right?
And it was windy all week. And then come the match day, it was really hot and it was a flat calm, and it brought all the algae up. And I think there was something like 4 fish between third and first.
Wow.
And we were I'm sure we was the only team to actually all catch. All of the team members caught. But yeah, it was an experience, and I've met people that still friends with now and stuff like that. But for me, it's river fishing is the.
It's a good incentive as well to think that you don't need all the gear to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like I say, I literally showed up with 3 fly lines, 1 rod, and a reel.
Yeah.
And then it just goes to show that you don't. Do you really need all the tackle, all these different fly lines? Because you're certainly not going to use 20 fly lines in 3 days fishing.
Yeah, I think these tackle manufacturers are thinking more about catching the anglers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely that.
So,
but it was a learning curve, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned as well you had a really nice fish, and when we spoke last, I was asking, what goals have you got for the next couple of months or the next season even? And you were saying about getting a big grill in. What was the story there with the one you had?
Yeah, so the one I had 2. I went fishing last week, and I was walking back. I was pretty much walking back to the car to come home to have tea, and I walked past this pool, and I've always done well in this particular pool. And something in my head just said, "Oh, you should put some nymphs through that."
And where's this then?
So I climbed. This is on my local, the River Calder.
All right.
And so I jumped down the wall, because the Calder's one of these rivers where you've, on our stretch of it, on the club stretch, it's a kind of get in where you can. There's no real access points. It's a lot of it scrambling down banks, jumping down walls and stuff like that. So I jumped down the wall, and I'm fishing away, and third, fourth cast, it was this really subtle take, and I wasn't even sure that it was a fish. There was just a split second where the indicator stopped, and I struck, and it was this grayling. I was like, "Oh, that's nice grayling," but it actually turned out bigger than I thought it was. And I do have a weigh net, but I didn't have it on me.
Oh.
But I reckon maybe just under £2.
Nice.
But if I was to have a goal, I really, really want to catch a big grayling. I went out to Bosnia last year, and I was like, this quite big grayling out in Bosnia. And again, that was an eye-opener trip. And I came about 4 centimetres short of a 50 centimetre fish.
Wow.
And yeah, I was pretty good, and I'd really love to go back. So that'd be a goal for next season, to get back to Bosnia.
Is there similar techniques to fish for them in Bosnia?
Yes and no. So when I went out, a lot of it was dry fly fishing, and downstream dry fly fishing. And I wasn't really sure. It was a bit of a spur of the moment trip. Some things had happened in private life and stuff like that. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go on a trip. I'm going to go to Bosnia. So I booked onto this trip, and like I said, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I'd heard that it was amazing. So I got there, and it was all size, really small flies, really small, just F flies, little emergers, little olive emergers, but I'm talking size 22s, 24s, really small stuff.
Right.
And you usually start the morning with a nymph, just a single nymph, again really small. And then as soon as the sun comes up, you start to see these big shadows in the water. And where before the sun comes up, over the mountain, you couldn't really see any of these fish, so you were blind fishing. But as soon as the sun came up over the top, it was just like you were stood on grayling.
Wow.
There was everywhere. And then they'd start rising. And yeah, so like I said, I caught a few nice grayling out there, but I fell short, and I've got to go back. It's on the list to go back next year, hopefully.
Did you catch the big one on a dry?
Yeah, the one from Calder. No,
the one you said you was 4 centimetres short of 50. Yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty much all on the dry. It's just incredible out there, though. The people are lovely, and the fishing's just immense.
Did you go with anyone, or did you just went part of a
I went with Aardvark McLeod.
Right, yeah.
So I booked it, Alex Jardine, stuff like that. And I went out with, I think it was 6 of us. There was me. God, who else? There's a guy called Kevin Tipper from Ireland. Phil Ratcliffe. There was quite a few of us. It was a really good laugh as well.
I guess you were prepared for it, because they would have told you what flies, go down small and size 24s, 22s, or whatever. You get a bit of information about it, but I'd known people that had been before as well. So a few of the guys that I speak to regular had said, go down small and expect this and expect that, but it still doesn't prepare you for when you actually get there. Yeah.
We spent 3 days on the River Ribnick, which was the dry fly, and then we went over to the River Cleaver, and God, that river really bends your head. It's crystal clear. They're like chalk streams, so like gin clear water.
Yeah.
And you'll be wading along, and there's like holes in the river, but they look about 3 to 4 foot deep. In actual fact, they're probably about 10 foot deep. But you can't tell, so you've got to be really careful when you wade.
Jeez, yeah.
But yeah, that was a difficult river to fish. It takes you a day or two to actually get used to fishing it, and you know what you actually need to do. But yeah, it's a special place, certainly a special place.
So maybe next year then.
I'm hoping to go back next year.
Yeah.
Like everything crossed to get back next year.
How often do you get out to fish over here?
In the trout season, I try for a couple of times a week. I have like 2 or 3 rivers on my doorstep. Like 2 of them are like 5-minute drive. The other one is the River Aire over in like Silsden, Skipton way. That's about 40 minutes from me. And I try to get out to, you know, if I'm lucky, three times a week during the trout season.
Right.
Obviously, when the grayling season comes into play, we get the shorter days and the dark nights and stuff. It becomes a little bit more difficult because fishing, as I'm sure for a lot of people, becomes a weekend thing.
Yeah.
With work and whatnot. So the grayling season is a little bit more tough. And then you've obviously got the weather to contend with.
The thing is, it's great where you are, as we mentioned earlier. You can just go out, you know, at the spur of the moment, really.
Yeah, I finish work sometimes at like 4 o'clock, and I can be at the river at 4:15.
Nice one.
So in the trout season, that's like amazing because you could fish until like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It can be quite dangerous though. And again, it comes back to the whole, you know, I'm getting much more out of fishing for a couple of hours after work.
Yeah. It's getting shorter.
A lot more enjoyment.
It's shorter now, mine, isn't it? I noticed like 7:30, 7:45 now. It's getting really dark, so it's running away.
Yeah, and I think that's what spurred me on because I've just with, you know, other commitments and stuff, I've not had time to put as much effort into fishing in the last 2 or 3 months. And then all of a sudden it's September and I'm like, oh, I need to go fishing before the season ends.
That's what I've noticed.
Got a bit of a kick going.
Yeah. But that's what I noticed, actually. I'm looking on your social media page and I see there's more tying going on than fishing. Now, you've made a name for yourself in the tying scene, and we actually met in the BFFI earlier on this year. How did you get into tying?
So tying came about, me and my dad had been fishing I can't remember where we'd been. We'd been fishing somewhere, and I'd asked him if we could call in at Fly Only, which is one of my local fishing shops, which is based in Huddersfield. It's family run by a guy called Stuart and Vicky, and they have a son called Dylan. And we'd called in at this shop, no intention of buying anything to do with fly tying. And Dylan used to be at the shop tying flies, and he's a pretty good fly tyer. Like, he ties classic salmon flies. He's had like guidance from the likes of Paul Little. So he's pretty good at fly tying. And I saw him tying these flies, and I think he's a year younger than me, maybe. And I was like, wow, what is he doing? So of course I look at Dad, and we walked out of the shop with a Vineyard starter kit.
Great. And
one of them really, really cheap vices. I think the vice was like £10 or something like that. And he said, my dad, to the shop, the lady at the shop, Vicky, he was like, she'll use it for a week and then it's going to go in the loft and it's never going to be seen again. And slowly but surely, the little box turned into a bigger box, and then the bigger box then turned into taking over the spare room with a desk and stuff. and yeah, it just never stopped. And I regularly tell my dad, look, it's not in the loft yet, and we're 10 years in.
I bet you get great pleasure telling him, proving him wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
As I said, we met in the BFFI. Do you do many shows?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I've what do I do? So I've done the British Fly Fair, Glasgow Angling Centre, the Yorkshire Show, Irish Fly Fair. I'm going to do. I've never been to the Irish Fly Fair, but I've been invited to go this November.
Right.
And I have tied at another Irish show, the Irish Spring Angling Fair, twice. So yeah, if I get invited, I'm usually there. And as you say, I'm quite active on the social media, posting flies and stuff like that. Along my fly tying journey, I was lucky to be a part of the Semperfly Pro team, and that was probably 3.5 years ago, something now, when I joined up with the pro team. And probably about a year ago actually, Anne, who runs Semperfly, put out an email request for some, a little bit of help with the social media and stuff. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll put my hand forward and try help out a little bit more, give something back and whatnot. So we, had a meeting and stuff, and I started helping out with the social media, and that's all it started off with, just, helping out and stuff like that. And fast forward maybe 2 or 3 months, it became apparent that it was going to be a little bit more than social media. And so it ended up, I went down to 4 days at what was my old job. And then in May this year, I was asked if I wanted to go full time. And it was a bit like, oh my God, what do I do? I didn't have to think about it much, but it was just a big change, because I was in quite a physical job before. I was a dry cleaner, and I'd gone from, standing up, working quite physically for 10 hours a day, to an office-based job. So it was a bit of a change, but I'm finding my bearings a lot more now, and I'm absolutely loving it. They're a great company to work for, and yeah.
So you work from home, do you?
Yes, I work from home 3 days a week, and I go, because they're quite close to me. Semperfly, their head office is in Selby, which is, on a good day, if the M62 is kind to me, it takes me about 50 minutes to get to them. So yeah, I'm there 2 days a week, and then I work from home 3 days a week.
Right. I did actually a podcast with Anne, and she was, I didn't realise until we spoke at the time that even though she lives up near you, she was born 2 miles from where I live. I can walk to where I used to live,
Small world.
Yeah.
It's great fun. Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's great fun. I'm absolutely loving it.
So what does it involve? The social media side?
So I do most of the social media. I kind of look after the pro team. So we've got quite a big pro team now. There's like nearly 100 of us based worldwide, from all corners of the world. We've got Australia, New Zealand, America, South America. We're everywhere. So my kind of job is to kind of manage them, make sure they're all right, and we're doing stuff for them and making sure they're happy and they've got what they need for shows and stuff like that. And then also stuff that goes on behind the scenes, so like new products that are in the pipeline and stuff like that, helping sort all them, and just stuff that goes on that the public don't see until it gets released, kind of thing.
It's a perfect job, really, for someone's into fly fishing, isn't it?
It is. I sometimes have to pinch myself and think, wow, I'm actually working in an industry that I love.
Yeah.
And it's good fun. I love it.
Are there any fly tyers which inspire you?
Yeah. quite a few. So when I first started tying, I was told to look on YouTube. And that's kind of what people tell everyone is, go on YouTube and search fly tying and you'll have thousands of videos to go off. But the guys that really inspired me were the likes of David McPhail and Paul Little. And actually, when I first started tying, I'd met Paul Little a few times, and through a mutual friend. I don't know if you know Anne Woodcock.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I call Anne my fishing mum.
She actually introduced me to you at the show.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she's God, I love that lady. She introduced me to Paul Little, and I actually used to send my flies in the post to Paul, and he would email me with what needs doing to them and what's wrong with them and what's good about them and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, people that inspired me, certainly Paul Little, David McPhail's, and then you start to then be introduced to other people. So you've got the likes of Tim Woods and Gail Marsh, people like that who I'd then see at these shows that I'd go to, because I used to go to like Glasgow Angling Centre and the British Fly Fair, just as a member of the public kind of thing. And that leads me on to if you're ever stuck about anything, YouTube is okay, and it's a great resource to see how flies are tied and stuff, but you can't ask questions to a YouTuber. I mean, you can write comments and stuff, but there's nothing to say that person's going to get back to you, whereas if you're asking questions at a show, like there in person, it's instant, and you take much more away from it because you can actually see the fly being tied in person. And again, that comes back to the fishing as well. If you're a new angler and you're on some water that you really don't know and you're struggling, don't waste time. Book in with a guide, because these guys, again, they know the stuff. They know what the fish are like in the river, or the lake, or the still water, or anything. It's their time is priceless if you want to know where to go and what to do. They know the things, these guides.
Great. Tell me, do you actually tie for a living as well? Do you actually take orders, or is it just for yourself?
I used to, so like in COVID and stuff, I'd do the odd order and whatnot, and it did at one point. I was like turning people away, but since changing jobs and other things, to be honest, I don't have the bandwidth to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'll pass the people that want flies. I'll pass them to other guys now who are more than happy to take them on. But yeah, and it was starting to take its toll on. This is my hobby kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that happens with a lot of people that tie for other people. They get into a bit of a rut with it.
Yeah.
So yes, I'll do flies for friends and stuff like that, and I have a lot that goes into the Wild Trout Trust and other charity organisation kind of thing where I've donated flies and stuff like that.
All right.
But yeah, that's about where most of the flies now are for my box kind of thing.
If I'm over at the Irish Fly Fair in November, which possibly I will, I'll call over and have a chat with you then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Sorry.
Well, before we wrap up, I've thoroughly enjoyed the chat. But there's one more question I want to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where would you want to be to make your last cast?
Oh. As I said earlier, the Calder it's not the most picturesque river. Like you could, some people would probably say the River Test or the River Spey or the Tay or something like that. But for me, it would have to be where I cut my teeth on river fishing, and that'd be the River Calder. And you might not catch a massive fish, and you might not catch anything at all, but that is where my last cast would be.
Many thanks, Phillippa.
Thank you for having me.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you'll get weekly podcasts and access to over 140 episodes, behind-the-scenes photography to go with each episode, plus other exclusive content and prizes. To become a Patreon, visit patreon.com/casting with Ceri Jones, or you can find the link on my website, castingwithcerijones.com. That's all for now. Tight lines, and may they always be up in the wave.